A class will work as a blueprint for an object. So whenever I create an object, I must follow that blueprint, and all the objects are going to follow that same structure, and all of them are going to end up being exactly the same, having the same properties and the same methods. The way that I create classes is a little more complicated initially at least, but then it gets easier for me to work with those classes later. So first I need to create a class. The way I do that is using the keyword class and then giving any name. Different from variables and name of our functions, whenever I create a name for a class, I am expected to use a capital letter at the beginning, just so I can differentiate a variable name from a class. Not that this is a requirement for the class to work, but it is a standard that you are expected to follow. Once I have the class declared, I need to create some structure for that. So I may or may not have a constructor which is going to be executed whenever I create a new class. For this constructor, I could have some parameters, and I can use those parameters to set some properties. So let's say I want to create an object that will have a first name and last name as properties. So to work as a blueprint, I could create a constructor that will force the developer to provide a first name and a last name as arguments. Once I receive those, I can use those parameters and create properties. Again, remember that I showed you that for a property I need to have the keyword this dot the name of the property, and then I can assign whatever I want. In this case, I am assigning first name. The property doesn't need to have the same name as the parameter, but usually we do that for simplicity, just so we know that those are the same thing. Once I have the constructor, that will create those properties for me. Then I may have some methods inside my class, and the way I create methods inside a class is just giving a name for that method and then using open and close parentheses. That will automatically create a function inside that class, which is a method. I might have some parameters for my method. In this case, I would just include the parameters inside the parentheses. And then I can use whatever inside this method, just using the keyword this if I want to get a property. Once I have created this blueprint, once I have created this class, I can start using that for creating objects. So a class is not an object. A class is a blueprint. Then I can create an object from that blueprint, from that class, just using the keyword new. So I'm going to declare here a variable called client, where I'm going to create a new person, which is the name of the class that I provide. Then I am required to provide the arguments for those two parameters that I have created, first name and last name. So I can provide here, which will create this object. Let's create this example. Let's follow what we have been doing so far. So inside here, I want to create a class student, capital S, and then a constructor to expect to receive first name and last name as before, and then the properties this.first name, this.last name, receiving the parameters that I have created. Once I have that, I have my blueprint created, which is expected to have two properties, first name and last name. Now I can start using this class for creating as many objects that I need. So let's start creating one object. So let me create one variable called student, which is going to receive a new student with name Mary Jane. And then let's just log that. So if I save, you can see that it is going to work. So what I have done here is I create this variable student. Remember, for the variable, I'm going to use all lowercase, and for my class, I'm going to use the first letter as capital case, just so I can differentiate them, and I can use the same thing. Remember, JavaScript will make a difference between uppercase and lowercase. So I have created this variable using the keyword new, and then I have provided to this blueprint the parameters that it is asking, Mary and the last name Jane. And then once I log, you can see that I get here first name and I get here last name, all the properties from this object. Now let's say I want to get a property from this object. I can do the same as before. So let's get first name, student dot first name. If I save, you can see that I have access to the property. So if I want to get first name, I will get Mary from there. As for methods, I can go ahead and create a method. Let's say get full name, which I'm going to return this dot first name concatenated with this dot last name. Once I have this method, I can use that. So let's just log full name, where we get student dot get full name. So if I save this code, you can see that full name Mary Jane. So far it works exactly the same as a JSON object. The only difference is that there is a difference on the way I create the class and the way I create the object. Also, the way this information is logged here on the console. Because if I expand now, you can see I have the properties first name and last name, but I cannot see the method. Once we had a JSON object, I would see the method here as well. But for a class, it's going to list only the properties. As for the methods, it's going to go inside this prototype. So if I expand the prototype, I can see that I have the methods constructor, which is automatically executed whenever I create a new object, and then all the other methods, in this case get full name, which is a function. So I still can have access to that. It's just the way I can have access to that, it's a little different. So now that I have my object, now that I am logging all the information, everything works exactly the same way. But it's easier now because I have a blueprint. So let's say that instead of creating a single object, I want to create again a list. But now it's going to be easier because again, I'm going to start creating an array of students. But now for each item, I just follow the blueprint. So new student for Mary Jane, new student for John Smith, and new student for Danny Johnson. And let's just log this new array of students. So creating a class could be a little more complicated, but for working with class, it's way easier. I don't need to keep repeating the same structure over and over again. I just create a new object. If I save that, you can see that I have a list of students. If I expand, all of them are type student. And if I open each one of them, you can see that all of them have the exactly same structure, first name, last name, and all of them receive the arguments that I have sent once I create that. As for the prototype, all of them are going to have the exactly same one with the method get full name. I don't need to repeat those over and over again. Therefore, there is no way for me to make a mistake. So whenever I want to use that, so let's create again a for each loop where we get each one of the students. And then we can log that information, first name, and also let's log the full name. And again, I just need to get the same from the blueprint because I am sure all of them have the exactly same structure. If I save, you can see it is working fine for each one of them. First name Mary, full name Mary Jane. First name John, full name John Smith. First name Dan, last full name Dane Johnson. So it gives me a little more trouble for creating this blueprint. On the other hand, it's way easier for me to work with that, especially if you're working with other developers inside your application, because each developer must follow the exactly same structure, and all of them are going to do that. They just need to create a new object from that class, from that blueprint, and everything will have the exactly same structure. So working with classes is it's more complicated for creating the class, but it has a lot of advantages once we start working with that. And classes also has another advantage over JSON object, which is inheritance.